Good evening. I'm Cory Morgan, and you're watching The Pipeline. This is the Western Standard's weekly production, a panel show that's going on. You know, I was just thinking a little while ago about this. This is the Western Standard's oldest show. They were doing versions of this if you really want to go into the deep bowels of YouTube and see where the Western Standard was first formed and the original Pipeline panels that were put together. It was, well, let's just say we've come a long ways. Either way, we're much more polished and professional now, or at least I like to think so. So I'll introduce the other folks I'm joined by today. I'll start on the end with our news editor, Dave Naylor.
It is an honor to be here with such two esteemed television legends.
Well, here we go, and thank you. In the middle, we have our opinion editor emeritus, Nigel Hannaford.
And, you know, my opinion on $1.25 will get you coffee in Hortons.
Yeah, if it's on sale.
If it's a very, very small one.
Well, yes. Well, we've got lots to chew on today. Boy, yes. So where to begin? Start federally. Maybe, Dave, I'll get you to kind of kick that off. The Liberals have voted against their own pipeline, or at least as the title would put it. They had a motion going through the House of Commons. Do they support the pipeline or not? And they couldn't be cornered.
Yeah, yesterday was Pipeline Follies. The conservatives introduced a motion saying, do you support pipelines, basically? And the Liberals said, no, it's just party politics. We're not going to support it because it doesn't even talk about A, B, and C. Pierre Poilievre then amended his motion to include A, B, and C, and they still voted against it. It was 169 to 136, so not even close. So kind of shows you what the Liberal Party thinks of pipelines, I guess.
Well, and these are kind of performative, too. I mean, this was a motion. It wasn't binding, even if they...
Right. No, non-binding motion. I mean, I think to some... There's two ways of looking at it. The one is the way the Liberals looking at it, that, well, the Conservatives are just playing silly buggers. And the other way is that the Conservatives are actually trying to flush them out and see just exactly how deeply and honorably committed they are to this, because here in Alberta, we were supposed to think, as Mr. Carney got on the plane and flew back again, that they were on our side and things were going to be made to happen. And there's lots of people here who say, I don't know, it's there's some holes in this argument. It's very costly. Does BC have a veto or not? Do the Indigenous people have a veto or not? Mr. Carney said, of course, they'd need to be in agreement. Well, is being in agreement, just being consulted? You know, there's a lot that's very loosey-goosey. And it was a memorandum of understanding. So we all knew from the start this was not exactly a deal inked in blood. But this actually did show a certain mentality of evasion and not wishing to be pinned down and keeping all the options open. Not a very pretty picture, and not one. And if you're in Alberta and you're dependent on your job in the energy industry, is not a good. It was not a good day's work.
Yeah, well, and it probably have defanged the second motion when they said, okay, we need this, this, and this. Yeah. As Dave said, you know, or we won't vote for us. It's okay. Well, I'll pull those things out, or I'll reword, I'll change them. Now we can have the vote, and they still voted against. The question, I guess, is, are they really actually afraid to say that they would support a pipeline, or is it just the case of parliamentary politics? If there was a motion from the Conservatives saying the sky is blue, the Liberals would vote against it and say, no, it's black.
I think it's a bit of both. I think Poilievre hit the nail on the head when he said, you know, there's no doubt there's a lot of the Liberal caucus that is against the pipelines, you know, the Stephen Guilbeault faction and so on. And Poilievre says, well, Carney goes into his caucus and says, everybody, take a deep breath. We'll go out there, pretend we support pipelines, and we know it's never going to get built. So let's, try and all stay together and just put on a good act.
Well, and the Bloc and the NDP happily joked in and joined this too, who have made no bones about being opposed to the pipeline. And, you know, they'll help segue when we get into what we're going to talk about a bit next with some regionalism going on. But Smith is taking a battering over this. And I'm sorry, but I'm saying rightly so to a degree. you've taken this one to the bank, and he won't even verbally commit that this is going to happen. As you said, it's an MOU. You only have so much, but it looks like they're taking us for a ride. It's not that hard for Carney just to say, I want this to happen, and he won't say it.
Yeah. No, I have to say, I wonder actually what Mr. Carney does want to happen. Is sort of significant that there's only been about 2 pieces of legislation passed since they haven't even got the budget passed yet. And he's been in office now more than 6 months. So there is a blockage in the system with the federal government. What they have done is they've given themselves permission to borrow a tremendous amount of money. That's the only thing that I can say, well, they did that. That is irrefutable. Everything else is moving along at a snail's pace, some of which, by the way, I'm glad is moving at a snail's pace. But at the same time, I don't actually understand where the favorable opinion of Mr. Carney is coming from. He makes these elaborate promises. Haven't seen anything come of them yet. And yet he still seems to enjoy the popular support, more even so than Mr. Poilievre.
Don't forget he got elected, right? So he does have that base of popular support.
Well, it was a while ago. Things could change.
Things can change. I think the polls have been pretty steady. You're right, though. They raised the debt ceiling to, I think, $1.5 trillion, which enables them to go months more without having to, defend what they're spending money on in Parliament. And to the pipeline issue, the Danielle Smith has to get a proponent out in front of this quickly, or else the whole deal is going to fall apart. As you guys have both said, there's a lot of wishy-washy talk in the MOU. But if a company like Enbridge steps forward and says, okay, we're going to take a run at doing this, then that moves it a huge step forward. Then you can start maybe thinking that, hey, this may happen. Because right now you're thinking this ain't going to happen.
So how would you incent a company like Enbridge or anybody else to take that step when you really don't know what political issues you're going to face in British Columbia?
Well, no, that's why you've got Bill C5, which would declare it a national project that, well, in theory, would brush aside any opposition from Indigenous groups or the government of BC.
So Mr. Carney has specifically said that they need to be on side. But he doesn't say that they had a veto, just implied that if they didn't agree, that probably wouldn't happen.
No, but as the head of a company, you could hold a press conference, Danielle Smith, and says, I commit our company to build this pipeline, and we will have shovels ready as soon as you promise us there'll be no stopping. Right. And we're not going to spend $1 before you give us that the permission.
Oh, see, it's a big chicken and egg thing. He's asking a lot to invest in a maybe. That's the problem. But
you don't hear oil companies or pipeline companies losing money. So they know there is money to be made if they get this thing built.
Yeah, they're making it in Qatar.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only news you can take to the bank from the oil industry in the last 6 months is that Imperial is leaving Calgary. What does that tell you about industry confidence in anything going forward? And I keep coming back to that story we ran about 6 weeks ago, talking about the actual mechanics of pumping carbon dioxide underground, which is the condition. That's the one condition that Mr. Carney has set for this. You have to invest in carbon capture and underground storage if this thing is going to go ahead. Well, for the kind of oil production that you're going to need to make the whole thing viable, that's an enormous expense. I'm not aware of, there are the places in the world where it's been tried on a large scale, but they haven't all done that well. The only one that's going well, actually, is the one in Weyburn, but that's like a very small scale operation by comparison with what's needed.
Yeah. Well, we'll watch and see. Leading into the next subject, patience is kind of wearing thin. We've had independence movement really kind of exploding in Alberta over this last 8 months or so. It's always been simmering, but it seems to be growing and hanging in there. One of the principals among them is Jeffrey Rath, and he's an outspoken man, I guess, to say the least. I'll kind of intro this one. He's been turning his guns on Premier Smith. He at the AGM really brought the issue to a head, waiting in line, and brought the room up on independence on those motions. Then he got quite upset over a CBC interview that the CBC even retracted because they'd claimed that Smith was going to campaign against independence actively. And now over Bill 14, over him, the ability of Danielle Smith to appoint or candidates, which is the ability that actually every party leader in Canada has always had. Now he's going for her head on a pike. I mean, he's basically saying we got to organize the constituency associations and have a leadership review and potentially pull her down. What's going on?
Well, sorry, when he claims he was taken out of context, but he wasn't. He made these comments on a podcast, and we quoted. I think we're the only one who had the story. We quoted him verbatim, and he sounded angry. And yes, I have enough constituency associations that we're going to top. We're going to get a special general meeting, and we're going to kick Premier Smith out of her job. That's exactly what he said. Rob Smith, he said no relation to Danielle Smith, is the UCP president, and he told us Jeffrey Rath maybe knows 2 constituency association heads, and that's it. And that he's upset because he didn't get all his people elected to the UCP board, and he's got no chance of doing this, and this is just one vote. And we ran that story yesterday, and now Mr. Rath is responding again to that. We'll have that story up. Jeffrey's got to learn to take a deep breath before he opens his mouth, because these sort of outbursts are not helping the independence movement, in my opinion, Cory.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things that aren't helping the independence movement, but one thing I would like to hear from somebody who wants independence is, all right, let's say that this little phone is Alberta. It's about the right shape. You've got Saskatchewan there and BC there, and you're now independent, and you want to export oil. You're pretty sure it's probably not going to go through BC. They're sticky enough with the federal government sort of suggesting that they ought to yield on this. There's basically one way out, which is south. Maybe that could be done, but you're not going to get the top dollar for it. So what is the independence option for developing the oil industry? I'm not saying it can't be done, but it has not yet been explained in my hearing as how it would be done.
No. The U.S. ambassador to Canada, in an interview with the National Post this week, he said the MOU sounds great. He says the MOU is going to enable Alberta to produce a lot more oil, and the United States wants some of it. So they've indicated their desire that anything extra we can get to them, they'll happily take. But as you mentioned, it's usually at that discounted rate.
Mm-hmm. Well, the landlocked issue, I got stock answers for this. I do get asked it quite often. Let's go. For starters, if you look at a map of Alberta and BC, you'll see that there are only 4 rail lines that come from British Columbia into Alberta. If we got into a theoretical situation that Alberta was independent, BC decided we're not going to let you export your oil through here, we won't let them export their trains through here. This standoff will last, I figure, 6 to 7 hours before we're at a table negotiating. In fact, we would finally have strength in negotiation, because the thing that I often point out to people too, they say you'd be landlocked. Well, we already are. We don't have anything to lose anymore. This government is shutting us down no matter what we try. If we were independent, theoretically, we could have leverage. Likewise, yes, we do have a customer to the south who would be happy to take a lot of product, but that's not an ideal situation. When you have a single customer, you can end up paying, losing on a premium with things like that. And that's where the patience is running out. I mean, part of the deal in keeping independent-minded people quiet and patient is saying, well, we can work something within the Federation to get it done. And that's why this pipeline is such a symbol. Because if we can't even get that, then that's where people are saying, well, what have we got to lose? But it would certainly be challenged. It's not like we go overnight and have a pipeline laid through BC as an independent Alberta, as a bullying neighbor, putting the elbows out and shoving them from our area. But
I've heard that works, elbows up.
Yes, well, it's not as well as some would hope. But I think that's part of the problem we have is some crabbiness and impatience with independent supporters in general. I mean, they've been spinning their wheels for a while now. My view on it, I mean, again, is schedule a darn referendum. I said as much in the Colin wrote. You know, the tea kettle's plugged up and it's pressuring up people like Rath, who were a little even more bombastic than others. But even, I guess, if you use the term, if it's not an oxymoron, moderate independent supporters, give them something to work on. Schedule that thing. Let them get working on petitioning. Let them get on the ground, and that pressure will come on.
Haven't you always been a proponent, though, that a referendum this quickly is not good for independence?
Yep.
The movement? So how do you explain the oxymoron then of saying, okay, let's get it cold?
Because the ball's rolling too fast now. There's too big a movement that is impatient and not and champing at the bit for this. In my view, if you don't give this outlet to it, they will form a party of an effective one. I mean, there's a bunch of little ineffective ones already, but they will form one that's going to pull 10 or 20%. It's not going to win, but it's certainly going to cause a heck of a lot of damage. Plus, if we're looking at 30%, if we have a referendum with 40%, I'm still only 54. I think it's conceivable. If it doesn't come this time, I could see it in my lifetime. It's a step towards. Plus, with 6 months of campaigning on it, maybe actually that ball will move closer to the end. Ideally, yeah, I think it should be a couple more years to work on it, but they just can't anymore. You know, it's like the horse when you see them at a gate at a race and they're just ready to go. You can't keep that gate closed for too long, or it's going to get out of control.
I would argue that your movement does not want Jeffrey Rath as its main focus and spokesman. So that's an issue you have to fix.
I don't have to. That's the Alberta Prosperity Project's. But I know, if he's speaking independent sport in general, I mean, that's it's been an interesting discussion because I'm not a member of any of those groups. I'm certainly, supportive of. I'll be a guest speaker at their events, things like that. That group has to figure out who's speaking for them and in which capacity, because there's an advantage of, I guess, not having a single sole voice, and that you can have different people, representatives speaking around. But then when one goes perhaps to the point of irritating even your own members, you've got to clarify who's speaking for whom. And yes, I don't know if necessarily my movement needs to, but I think the Alberta Prosperity Project had better start examining who's speaking.
Well, the other thing, Cory, is all the discussion surrounds the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot more to becoming an independent country than that one issue.
That's just the symbol, right?
It's a symbol. It's a useful symbol. But one of the unfortunate things, which Dave alluded to very delicately, is that the people who are most to the front and foremost, would you really follow them into independence and trust their judgment for everything that has to come next? The Constitution, how we're going to run things. What are we going to do about basic civil liberties? Do we have them? There's an assumption among independence-minded people that Alberta will be more free when it is removed from some of the Canadian, some of the strictures of Canada, that will have different values than those people back east who consistently elect Liberals. And that may be true, but it also may not be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, if you could make a smaller, bad version of what you just escaped.
Exactly.
One of the things I talk to in rooms that I speak to people is, well, there's no way we embrace the Westminster parliamentary system if we just managed to rip ourselves out of it. That would just be idiocy. I mean, if this hasn't served us, we have to examine new systems. And I have some of those discussions.
Well, I'd actually say you could embrace the Westminster system, because it's the people back east who are separating themselves from it. If we could just have things done the way the Westminster system is supposed to work, where the politicians make the laws and the judges interpret them as they are written, and not according to the latest fancy that coming from the Liberal Ministry of Justice. Well, the Westminster system is pretty good. It's what the Liberals have done with it for the whole country that makes us suspicious and frustrated at all. You got to rest.
I don't want an appointed Senate. I don't want a centralized government.
Have an elected one, but have a Senate. But
then we're getting into a new system. And a bicameral one we can have without. But you're right. See, that shows that there does have to be discussions, nuanced ones. And
those discussions are not happening that I've heard.
They are, but they aren't necessarily embraced. It's funny. I've had, for example, Bruce Party from Queen's University, a law professor, who's put out his very libertarian version of a very scaled down constitution, which I think is a pie in the sky level.
Oh, I don't know. That appeared in C2C about. I think we ran a version of it here in the Western Standard when I was still at the desk.
And I interviewed Bruce about that. As a libertarian, him and I
pretty good
agreed on it. I mean, very much from that empowering the individual, reversing the relationship with the government. But Jeffrey Rath went on a rampage about Bruce Party just yesterday on X. And as I said, so that's where they've got to start to centralize some of the discussion. But you're right. You've got the movement has to come up with more answers for what's going to happen the day after.
Yep.
And you can't answer every one of them. That's part of the problem, too. If you want to go into whataboutism to the point that you never have a referendum, you'll never have a referendum. At some point, people will have to vote. There's going to be some question marks. But the more you can fill in advance, the better you'll get the confidence of citizens. Right now, as we said, if we voted tomorrow, it's not going to do well. There's much more to be done. But if you have 6-8 months of a campaign on independence, we'll see what surfaces.
And you think right now the leading the pro-Canada side would be Tom Lukaszuk.
Well, there we go.
Lukaszuk versus Rath. The stories will never end.
That would be a nice, cool, and rational discourse.
He's certainly got nicer hair than Jeffrey.
Well, I mean, this is the only place I'll give Thomas credit. I mean, he's got nicer hair than most of us. He's one in the hair.
Yeah, well, listen, if we're going in the hair stakes, we've had nicer hair, and it hasn't got us anywhere.
No, we had that in Ottawa for quite some time, and that didn't pay off. So he's prancing around with Katy Perry now. All right, well, let's see. Nigel, perhaps you want to lay out Bill C9.
Look, what's happening in Canada right now is that the Liberals, for the last 5 years, have been trying to control the internet. And they've put out 7 bills, of which 2 just fell by the wayside. 2 got passed. 1 died on the order paper as well, and they've got a couple out this session. That's Bill 2 and Bill 8. And then there's Bill 9. And Bill 9 is, strictly speaking, not about controlling the internet. It's marketed as an anti-hate bill. And so this is the bill for people who are following this at a distance. This is the bill that would make it illegal to raise a Nazi flag on your flagpole in your backyard. Now, I'm not aware that, only cross burnings are more unlikely than that. I mean, people just don't do that. So you have to ask, why is this the object of legislation? I have a suspicion that the answer lies not in Alberta, but in Quebec, where the Quebec government is anxious about its own people and some of the extremes of hatred that they're experiencing back there. But anyway, this Bill 9 has hit the national news, and apart from the swastika, there is one amendment that has been pushed by the Bloc Québécois, which are very anti-religious symbolism. If you were a Muslim, you're not supposed to wear your Muslim gear to work. If you're a Christian, you're not supposed to display your cross. And they want to make it that you cannot use your sincerely held religious beliefs as a defense if you are accused of saying something unkind about homosexuals, the gay lifestyle, for which the Bible has a number of references. So if you are pulled before a Human Rights Commission and you say, well, I pulled my kid out of school because I didn't like what they were teaching, and they say, well, that's discriminatory, and you say, well, that's my sincerely held religious belief, up to this point, you were okay. If this bill passes as amended, then you would not be okay. Now, the Justice Minister, Sean Fraser, is trying to say, no, he makes various promises about how this thing will be fenced in and it's not going to be the problem you think it's going to be. And I don't doubt that he's perfectly sincere in his assurances. It's just that he is not in a position, even as Minister of Justice, to give those assurances, because you don't know what happens to this legislation when it comes before the courts, and the judges start thinking for themselves and saying, well, I don't know, it seems pretty off to me. I think you're guilty, you know. Well, the minister said, well, I said that 2 years ago, you know. Now you're in front of me. So it's a very serious issue of religious freedom that's on the line here with Bill C-9. It's dangerous. And what that has to do with the internet is this. People use the internet to put their opinions out. You do.
Oh, certainly.
I do. You have opinions.
I try and keep them neutral.
You try and keep them to yourself. But the thing is that people may wish to comment on things related to trans, LGBT, and, you know, a lot of people don't like that. But we believe in free speech in this country, and therefore we do what we do. However, if somebody who says, well, I said what I said because I actually believe what it says in the Bible, now you can't say that anymore, or that's the intention of the act. And so it's going to have the effect of cramping free expression on a lot of things. People are not going to want to take the chance of getting too close to these issues. And that's where this bill of C-9 works together with Bill 2, which makes it possible for the government to walk into your internet supplier's office and look at the files and see who you've been corresponding with and what sites you've been without a warrant. And then so it goes on. It's a real tightening of the grip, and it's been going on for about 5 years, been fits and starts, but it's relentless.
So, Dave, I mean, you know, in news, you see this maybe as a solution looking for a problem, though? I haven't heard a lot of cases of people using a religious defense if they've been...
No, I can't remember. And that was a very good, long, Derek-like explanation of the...
Somebody had to do it.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
I appreciate it, because you certainly know more about it than I do. But would it mean that a priest in a pulpit who reads scripture, somebody in the congregation could say, well, I really don't agree with that, and make a complaint?
Yes,
and that priest could end up in trouble for just reading the Bible.
Heck, you could get into trouble as a pastor just by objecting to a drag queen story hour if you live in Calgary. So, yes, you absolutely bet there will be people keeping an eye on what's said from the pulpit. You know, a lot of pastors preach the Bible. They start at Genesis and they go through to Revelation. So there's going to be some places where they got to deal with it, or else admit that you're afraid to deal with it.
Well, something that would really truly put this to the test, though, I could see some busybodies trying to charge a minister or so on for saying it. I dare one of them to take an imam for quoting the Quran, because this is supposed to apply to that too.
Yes, it does.
You bet they wouldn't dare for a second. And I tell you what, I mean, any ancient religious text doesn't, stand up to the measure of what's considered acceptable today or not. That's just the nature of it. These are written thousands of years ago. We just interpret that as older thinking and don't practice, perhaps, stoning people and all those goodies that are packed into the Old Testament. We can leave it at that, typically. If there's any area where they seem to be working on the literal interpretations and wanting to bring it in, it's coming more out of Islam than anywhere else, yet that's the one area they won't touch.
No, and you're right, Corey. There's some imams. There's a guy in Victoria, I think, whose name escapes me, but he spews hateful rhetoric on a weekly basis. And I know there's been complaints made, but he hasn't been brought up before any court, any board, he calls for the wiping out of Israel and really very, very anti-Semitic stuff that is quite vile. And Corey's right. Everybody's afraid of it, even to go within.
There's a very negative attitude.
It is. And you're right, Corey. Once again, it'll be Christians who are bearing the brunt of it. Well, Islamics get off scot-free.
And I'm just, I'm of the free speech mind. I mean, I don't have to like everything that I hear from every faith or what they put forward, but it's their right to do it. And I will counter it through discourse and go from there. But I just see this as a showing as well. Just if they're going to be selective with the application, well, they shouldn't apply it at all. But if it's selective, this is really a worthless piece of legislation.
Amen. If I may say that.
Praise the Lord.
Inshallah. Well, let's talk about the parliamentary budget officer. He's recanting.
Yes, Jason Jacks is his name. He's the interim budget officer. By all accounts, doing an by all accounts, doing an exceptional job. When the Liberals first brought down their budget, he called it shocking and unsustainable
and stupefying.
And he's now obviously had a word in his ear and walked back his comments and is now saying, yeah, all right, it might be sustainable. So, yeah, somebody got to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, this takes you back to the budget discussion. You mentioned before how the government had extended its credit limit to 1.5. At any rate, you know, when the Liberals took office in 2015, the national debt was about $600 billion. Over COVID plus a year, they managed to get it up to 1.2. They doubled it. And, you know, I thought it was wrong, but a lot of people would probably forgive them for saying, well, we had to get ourselves through COVID. I think it's a poor argument, but at any rate, that's the one they went with. Well, now, Mr. Carney comes in and says, we can do another 25%. So this is borrowed money, and ostensibly it's so that we can develop Canada. All these big projects, pipelines, for instance, you know, this is how this extra money is going to be used. And there was a very strong commitment made to national defense. I think it was $80 billion. Well, that's great, except that we don't know how to buy equipment in this country. So whether that'll ever get spent on defense or whether it'll be diverted to something else, we don't know. Point is that the parliamentary budget officer looked at this and said, this is stupefying, you know. And he said so out loud, and then he got whacked and said, well, maybe I was a little hard on them, but we know what he really thought, because he said what he really thought. And you know what? It was what a lot of other people were thinking without necessarily having the expert knowledge that he had to be able to go out into the public square and point the finger. Well, he did.
And it's also created problems with looking for his replacement. The Finance Committee down in Ottawa passed a motion that they want to interview any candidates for this job, just so they can see what he thinks, money-wise and whatnot. And they were shut down by the Privy Council office. There's no chance. You're not going to get a chance to interview any of these nominees.
Well, that's what we've pointed out. He is the interim parliamentary budget officer. What would his motivation be in recanting? Is he pursuing, that job as the full time, trying to unburn the bridge that he did when he dared to criticize the horrific budget that was placed before him? I mean, why? Well,
he's not ready for retirement. So even if he is only the interim parliamentary budget officer, he still has 20 years to work, or 15 years or something like that. And he has chosen to make his career in the civil service.
Yeah, well, I guess he's not looking private, because, I mean, that coming from that role, if you had a principal controller in a corporation, actually a lot of companies would seek that out. Hey, you're willing to say the emperor has no clothes, and we could use that.
And just to show you what kind of job he's doing, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation on Monday released their naughty and nice list. So leading off the naughty list was Doug Ford, quite rightly. And leading off the nice list was Jason Jacks, because they were just thrilled with the job he's doing in holding Ottawa to account.
Yeah. I mean, it could also be that, here's a man who's been decades in government and sickened by everything that he saw. I mean, I don't know the man, so I'm just making this up as I go along, but it could be that he just said, I got a chance to actually say what I really think for once and for all.
Had his mad as hell, I'm not taking it for a moment.
It's one of those moments.
But he didn't carry forward with it. He's unfortunately
a rare moment in the civil service. Somebody actually speaking the truth.
Yeah. Well, it's just unfortunate, because it is an important role to have somebody who will at least speak up on these things somewhat candidly, and they're making it clear that we want a yes person to fill that role in the future that the Privy Office will choose, and it's just going to be a useless.
Reading what he said carefully in his recant, I got the impression that he was not actually recanting what he found, merely saying that he could have been more circumspect in how he made his report. And perhaps that's so. It was certainly an unusual expression of grim determination that for a civil servant. But hey, that's great.
Well, auditors general, we see that quite often too, when they actually poke into an area that the government doesn't like, and suddenly the pressure's on to move them out of that position too. They really want neutered senior bureaucrats when it comes to watching their own activities. And it's not to be fair, it's not just Liberals who are like that. No government likes it when somebody's poking into their misdeeds.
But it's just that in the last 10 years, those supervisory agencies have been so much busier than they were.
Oh boy. Where was it? The Arrive can. Yeah. Is that ever nobody's ever gonna pay a price for that, are they?
RCMP still investigating, but you and I will long be in the retirement home for journalists before anything happens.
Just speaking of federal agencies that are neutered, I mean, come on, how many years does it take you when there's such clear fraud? You know, if it was you and I doing it in the private market, don't worry, we'll all be handcuffed already and out the door, but they're just ragging the puck.
Yeah. Well, that's, I believe they were friends of the government.
They are. The RCMP, that's a separate discussion all into itself. Oh, why don't we move a little provincial? We've got a new party leader in Alberta has appointed himself.
That's right. And as a sitting member, he becomes the Alberta Party's only sitting MLA. Peter Guthrie, MLA from Airdrie, was booted out of the UCP caucus earlier for basically complaining about the procurement scandal. And he'd been a sort of a needle in the side of Danielle Smith for a while. So he moved over to sit as an independent and now has joined forces to lead the Alberta Party.
I guess he's not on his own. He's got Scott Sinclair there with him as well.
Yeah. Has Scott moved to the Alberta Party, or is he just sitting as an independent?
I believe he's with them. He's moved over, yeah. But Guthrie's declared himself the leader of this two-person.
Mm-hmm. Two-person caucus.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, so they have the Alberta Party, and according to what you were printing earlier, the idea is that they're going to do whatever they have to do to call it the Progressive Conservative Party. I guess an earlier attempt to just take that name was resisted by the UCP, which still has the rights to the name. But really, however they, maybe the new party, they should have a new name. I don't know. But what the game is here is that they want to give what they call a sort of a more centrist option to people who want to vote in the next election. Well, I'm not sure that anybody in Alberta has asked for a centrist option. There are some people who want separation, independence, and there are people who are going to back up Danielle Smith. But nobody has said, if only there was somebody who was just, like we used to be 40 years ago, a little corrupt, but not too corrupt, a little malleable, look like you're doing something, but not actually do anything too drastic, because actually we're not very good at doing big things. So let's just keep the bills paid and move ahead and give out the proceeds of the oil patch, except the proceeds aren't there anymore. So it's an odd sort of thing.
Well, the Alberta Party has just sat there as a home for homeless MLAs for 4 or 5 election cycles, saying we're running in the middle. We're the happy middle. Albertans want the middle. And they get electorally obliterated every time. 2% support, 3% support. The media treats them as if they're viable, but the electors never do.
Yeah, 2023 election, the Alberta Party of 2023 got 12,576 votes. The UCP got 928,900. Even the Greens got more than the Alberta Party. Maybe it was weak leadership, and under Mr. Guthrie, things will be different. But
Stephen Mandel led them. A few people have gone through it. I mean, given the long history of that, what that vessel has been, some trivia. But that was the very first provincial party I was a member of. I was on the board. Myself and some board members marched off and formed the Alberta Independence Party. And then we turned around to try to get registered status by trying to take over the Alberta Party, and we failed. But the Alberta Party has been used for exactly that by other groups year after year. They take over that withered board, and they get party status. Then they turn it into what they want to, and then they fail.
I mean, the problem here is that they're never going to win.
No.
But they have the power to take the win away from the UCP and make room for, how many seats would they have to flip for the NDP to come in? I mean, the one that Guthrie is in, was it Airdrie Cochrane?
Yes.
Cochrane, Airdrie, whatever. Just looking at the numbers here, it would be a bit of a fluke if having a progressive conservative option in that particular constituency was going to upset the situation. But there are a number where lose a couple of thousand votes and change the.
Yep. The very last thing we need is Premier Naheed Nenshi.
Well, there's something to keep in mind. Despite what the Alberta Party always claims, part of why they always get rejected as well is really when it comes out to policy-wise, they almost always land pretty far to the left. So if anything, they might end up pulling votes from Nenshi. Don't assume that they're going to pull from the Conservatives. Voters have seen through that. So we'll see.
Either way, they're a non-entity.
Yeah, at this point.
If they were a color, they'd be beige.
There we go. Forgettable. All right, well, let's try not to be too forgettable. We'll move on with the parting shots. I guess I'll start in the end with Dave. What do you got?
I'm going to use my parting shot to plug my friend Nigel's show, Hannaford Show, tomorrow night. Exclusive interview with Premier Danielle Smith. Must-watch TV.
But thank you very much, Dave. I was going to say the predictive capacity of the Hannaford Show is remarkable. Last week we interviewed a lady who was leading a charge in Canada to pass legislation that you have to be 16 years old before you can get access to social media. Well, bless my soul, I pick up the paper this morning. Australia has just done that. Well, I thought, well, this is an interesting idea, but I don't know how practical it is. Well, if the Aussies can do it, we can.
It would be a workout. It's enforceability is a challenge with that sort of idea, but I mean, the principle's okay. They don't necessarily need those accounts.
Well, to that point of enforceability, first thing I thought of, and my guest told me that in actual fact, they can tell, they being the social media company, they can tell, they know who's got a credit card and who doesn't, and who's only been online for 6 months and so forth. Probably a kid, and then just the deal doesn't go through. Interesting idea.
Yeah, well, they're certainly pretty prescient. I mean, I swear I drive it along the road and I'll just think to myself, geez, I'm creating a Mars bar, and suddenly the next ad that pops up through Meta will be one for Mars bars for some bloody reason. They know us better than we do. They sure should be able to figure out who's under 16. But
they probably can.
Marty Master. So, I mean, before I get on to mine, let you go, though, with you having being able to bend the ear of the Premier, you got a couple of things you can hint at where you might want to go in that discussion with her?
I haven't even had that discussion with her staff, and I'm not going to have that discussion with her staff. So if I tell you today...
I don't want you to give any spoilers to keep her off guard. I just nice to...
No, I think the thing that everybody wants to know is, where do we go from here?
Yeah, well, hopefully she's got some good answers. I'm sure we'll all be tuning in for it.
Yeah, I think we're going to do it at 8 o'clock, not 7 o'clock, though. We just need that extra hour of production time. Yeah. So if you are likely to tune into the Hannaford Show at 7 o'clock, give it an hour.
It's past my bedtime.
Take yourself a bowl of chips and some cocoa and watch the Hannaford Show. You can't not, now that you promoted it.
No, I know. All right. I will try and stay awake.
Certain if there was a late Seahawks game, you wouldn't miss it.
No, I would not.
All right. And for myself, I just wanted to point out, I saw in the National Post, this is stuff that's been going on. The BC, the court has ruled BC laws must be interpreted through the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP. I mean, BC already kind of, said we're going to model it, but now we got the courts actually saying you have to follow that. If people have read that vile document, and it's vile. Again, if you think that my cause as an independent supporter is hopeless, keep bringing stuff like this in and see how long this nation's going to stick together. But BC, boy, are they ever got some serious problems.
So what happens when you want to remortgage your house?
Well, if you're in Richmond, you're pretty much out of luck. Yeah, we're seeing those stories popping out. Businesses that are canceling developments because they can't get their financing behind it because the status of the ownership of that land now is unsure. And some individuals have been popping up saying, we're trying to renew our mortgages, and the bank's saying, nah, sorry, we're not committing to give you 20 more years because we don't know if you're going to own it in a few years or not. Crazy. But that's BC crazy. At least we can hide from it a little bit over here.
Yes, no craziness in Alberta.
No, not here. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dave and Nigel, for helping us cut through some of the crazy. And yes, I'll close it off and thank everybody else for tuning in. And as Dave said, make sure to tune into Nigel's interview. It's going to be great. And subscribe to Western Standard. That's how we pay the bills. We aren't getting all those tax dollars like some outlets are anyways. So keep us independent. Check it out, westernstandard.news/subscription. $100 for a year, $99 for $99. $9.99 for a month. Always going to hang just under $10. It's an
Christmas special, haven't we?
Yeah, there is a special. Check out the website and see what you can get. Get a deal while you can, guys. So if you're subscribed already, thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, get on it and buy a subscription for one of your friends or kids. It's spreading information and independent thought. Thank you very much, and we will catch you on the next one.